What the is leadership? Thought-provoking conversations with expert leadership scholars, exceptional leadership practitioners, and other extraordinary individuals. Good day. I'm Jonathan Kroll, and I'm the Executive Director and a lead trainer of the Leadership Trainer Certification Program. And I'm here with Katie Friesen, who's a faculty member at St. Thomas University in Miami, Florida. Katie, welcome. Doing so great. Thank you so much for being here. And as you know, as everybody knows, we start this conversation the same way every time. Katie, what the is leadership?
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Leadership. Oh, man, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think leadership is really doing the tough work. Doing the work that maybe we're afraid to do, we're afraid to dive into. We look at it and we get feelings of discomfort, and I think we like to be comfortable as human beings. And so when we look at something like that, I think our first thought is to say, what can I do to make this not so uncomfortable? And, I think leadership is about saying, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable. Let's fucking do it.
All right. So how do we as leaders, and this is a two-part question, how do we as leaders cultivate that for ourselves, that disposition, maybe that grit or resilience? And since leadership is relational, how do we cultivate that in others so that we collectively can get done, can do the things that we're really uncomfortable with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oftentimes when I think about leadership or I teach leadership, I think, man, I really need to eat my own words, right? Because I don't like to be uncomfortable. Like I don't want to do the hard stuff. I don't want to be awake at night. I want to sleep. I want to be out on the beach. I'm in Miami now. Like, come on. But I think to your first part of the question, it starts with us, right? Like if we want people and we want organizations and we want to solve problems, we have to be the first people to take that step forward. And so practicing a lot of self-awareness, a lot of reflection. I do a lot of journaling. Like this doesn't feel good. And just personal reflection to say, okay, what am I really going to lose if I take on this situation? And is there a possibility that on the other side of this, that there might be something that's good for me, that maybe I become a better version of myself, or I find a solution to a problem that I couldn't find because I was too afraid to go into discomfort. And leading into your second part of your question, I don't want to do that alone. I don't want to be feeling shitty about myself.
Right.
Right. Like I think it's physical touch is one of my love languages. And so being able to put my hand out on someone or something that is kind of solid, or maybe that's just right next to me, that's in it with me, brings me so much pop. And maybe a little bit of comfort in the discomfort, right? Say, we're going to do this together. And, we don't have power levels of leaders and followers, that we're in this together. We're questioning, we're unlearning, we're tearing apart, we're putting back together, we're trying, we're tearing it apart again. I think in just being kind of on the ground floor with just everyone there, working through the shit together, I think is one of the biggest things that drives me to continue to do tough work. And it's certainly not easy. But if I know that I have a group of people who are going to say, okay, let's go do it together, that's taking the first step in trying to say, here we are met with another challenge. This is going to be awful. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Like, let's just push through it and see what we can do.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're talking about also here, especially this last remark, is really facing reality. That I don't think leaders are effective when we're so Pollyannish and rose colored. I think it is important to be optimistic and hopeful, but we also need to be situated in reality. And
Oh,
you're really articulating that in like, this is the problem that we're facing. Let's work through it.
yeah, absolutely. I was watching, I think it was a TED Talk with Marty Linsky with the adaptive leadership, right?
Yes.
And in his TED Talk, he talks about how, you know, kind of challenging this idea that when we talk about leaders and leadership, we talk about all this inspirational stuff. Um, and I was like, oh, that's kind of fascinating. Even if you've watched the TED Talk millions of times and you've read the work millions of times, every once in a while I find because of the situation that we're in, or just kind of where I'm at in that moment, that I'm learning something new. And so as someone who tries to be really positive, maybe not so much behind closed doors, when I kind of let it all out, but I try to be really positive. But I thought this was really interesting because by saying, we all are doing a wonderful job, or we're all working at our best, or whatever it is, we're handling the situation well. I don't mean to be a cynic, but what are the things that what are the things that we are missing, and what are the points of reflection that we could dive into
Mm-hmm.
by saying, how could we make this even better? And so sometimes I think we get kind of caught up in, everything is awesome, like the Lego movie, and then like everything's kind of, I think in most parts and in most situations, it is going really, really well. But I think that's the point where I'm like, okay, is that just because people are unafraid to tell you that things aren't going well? Are there things that you're
Mm-hmm.
missing, voices that you're not hearing, things that you don't want to see because you don't want to do the hard work? And so that TED Talk this time around, I was like, that's so good, and what a thing to say. I'm sure he was giving a TED Talk to, leadership developers and trainers, and,
Mm-hmm.
even people who are leaders, right? And what a thing to say in that space, to kind of challenge those ideas, and be that example himself.
So you, in your last description, you're talking about reflection, which you also talked about at the very beginning. What are the 3 or 4 tactical moves that you do as a faculty member towards your students, or as a leader with your followers, to engage folks in the reflective process? Like, what do you do that our viewers need to know so that they can encourage reflection as part of their leadership practice, as a healthy leadership habit?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think the biggest thing is having students bring in materials, whether it's a newspaper article, whether it's a photo that they took, whether it was a place that they went, a class that they were in. I think it's bringing in materials from the week. So
Mm-hmm.
I usually see my students about once a week. And so I say, okay, what happened this week? And I think that's kind of the first step. What is actually happening in my life, rather than like letting it go, into the abyss. And so bringing something in, that they've engaged with, or that they've been a part of, and then walking through steps of, okay, what happened? What was your response, and what did you do? How did that work out
Mm-hmm.
for you? And what did you learn? Would you do the same thing over? And this could be as simple as like, I went and hung out with friends, now in my basement, because, COVID doesn't allow us to go outside, and, I don't, we taking selfies and playing with
Yeah.
stuff. What are we going to do right now, right? And what does that mean for socialization? Like in being able to connect with one another and be creative in the way that we make use of our time. And maybe it is we play dress up because, we haven't played that in so long, and all of a sudden, we have young adults that are using their imagination in ways that they never thought, right?
Exactly.
And so I think by connecting to what students, and in particular, I work with undergraduate students, what they're doing kind of just in their daily lives and getting them to just stop. And so, that's what I always say the value of leadership education is that opportunity in those spaces to do that kind of reflection that I think are often missed in other spaces.
Well, and what I really appreciate about what you're saying, what you do as a practice is when it's crafted in a group experience, that sharing from whatever happened in the last week provokes synergistic relationships and connections amongst all the people in that space, which just deepens the opportunity for us to work well together towards whatever's going on, whatever our leadership objective is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think now more than ever, that has become salient to us because we are in this situation of the pandemic, and, all of our lives have been kind of upended. Obviously, the pandemic is affecting people, of different races differently across the United States. But I think it's given pause to individuals to really, we're all in it, and now all of a sudden we're seeing the effects of further marginalization of the population.
Yes.
So, coming into the classroom and recognizing that I have a common experience with other people in this class, even across differences, but also being able to see what happens with those differences, I think is really powerful as well.
Brilliant. Katie, thank you so much for your time today. I always like to give the guest the last word on leadership. And so what would you like to offer?
Get in and do it. And call me if you need to, because like I said, I'm not always prepared to get in and do it, but just do it.
I'm going to put your cell phone number across the screen now, and so people will just call.
That's fine. I probably need it.
Well, thank you again. What a refreshing conversation, a reflective conversation on what the is leadership. Thank you really so much for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining this conversation on what the leadership is. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to check out leadershiptrainer.org for all of your leadership training, programming, and resources.